Let's talk about airbrush cleaning because that's a really good question that you guys like. How often and how do you clean your airbrush? And I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't want to hear, or that people should be telling you, but they're not. Is airbrush cleaning has like 19 different ways. Okay, if you ask like 1,000 different painters how they clean their airbrush, you're going to get 1,000 different answers, and that's okay. So I'll tell you like the first thing is the internet is usually wrong on this. And the reason for that is that my airbrush usage and your airbrush usage is probably different. And then same thing for this other guy and then this other, YouTuber and then this other commission painting. And so that's kind of the one thing that you have to consider is like I use my little airbrush, I use mine probably every day or every other day. That's not the case for most people. Also, I paint usually armies and large volumes of models. Some people just paint one little model. Some people do primer with their airbrush. Some people don't. If you use only inks, it's completely different than if you use a big cheap thingy like this to undercoat your miniatures, or you're dual priming and you're only using primer on them. The rate at which you have to clean changes, and then the method it changes. So listening to me telling you how I, clean my airbrush, or me or anybody else for that matter, is always, it comes with a little asterisk. Okay, it's not because it works for me that it should work for you. And that's kind of the one thing that a lot of people, they fail to consider. They go, I do this and you should do this too. Well, maybe you should not. And what I usually tell people is at some point you're going to try, like you're going to watch 19 videos. You're going to try the first one. And if that one does not work, you're going to watch the second one. You're going to try. And at some point you're going to find one that works. And from that day on, don't change. Whatever you read, whatever you look, if you don't have a problem, don't change what you do. And that's the same thing with like thinning your paint. Okay, thinning. I use window cleaner, glass cleaner to thin my paint. That's like an super old school way. Nobody does that anymore. But I learned it that way. It works for me. That's what I do. But cleaning is the same. The same thing with like what solution do you use? There's you can use alcohol with water. You can use straight alcohol and then something else. You can use window cleaner. You can use airbrush cleaner. Like there's a bunch of brands. You can use straight water because you watched the video from Ken from Badger telling you that you should only use water in your airbrush. The reality is I've used water for a while and it doesn't work. For me at least, but some people, they get like mad results with it. So that's kind of the tricky thing. Now I will tell you this. I'll share with you my way. What I only use glass cleaner here. I buy the cheapest kind available to me. It's $1.99. You get like what 1 liter, I guess, almost a million of it. You need to wear a little mask when you use it. Because whatever you do with an airbrush, you should use a little mask. And it's past 2020, so I know you got them. So yeah, you want to use a little mask because like you're spraying down, like you're vaporizing paint, and that's, even if it's like non-toxic, it kind of is. Like you don't want that. So, but I use window cleaner to thin down my paint, and I use it to clean. I rarely, if ever, use anything else. The other only product I use besides that is like 90 proof alcohol, like isopropyl alcohol. I got that. You have to go to the drugstore. You have to ask like the pharmacist there, and then you have to like explain that it's for like paint and stuff, and you're not gonna drink that stuff because it's like super terrible. But they usually sell it to you. And the thing with alcohol, now I wish I had the bottle, but I ran out, and then I didn't get some more. But the thing with alcohol is that alcohol is a very, very bad thinner because it breaks down the paint. And that's a big problem because you don't want it to break. And it also evaporates really quickly, which is another problem because then it will evaporate and then your paint's going to dry and it's going to cake, and it's going to like stick on there forever. But it's really good at cleaning. But if you deep clean your airbrush, like you break it down and all the pieces, you just like shine them with alcohol, you have to run this with water or with like thinner or something so that your paint does not kind of like come into contact with that your paint does not come into contact with the alcohol that you use to clean the airbrush. Otherwise it will do exactly what I just said. it's gonna gunk on there, and you're not gonna understand why, because it's just because the leftover alcohol that's on there is gonna kind of like reactivate or whatever, and then it's gonna fuck up your paint. And then I've seen, other people like Symbol Clean is a very great cleaner because it's non-toxic, smells like root beer. It's pretty great. So it works well. It works well. There's like, again, million different ways. Find your one way that works for you, and then stick to that regardless of like these other 90 videos that you're gonna watch. And that's perfectly okay. And that's how it should be. Like if you find somewhere that works, don't listen to anybody else that tells you otherwise. It's because, again, what works for me probably does not work for you, and so on and so on. Like when I first started the airbrush, like I tell that story a lot, but when I was kind of the first guy around to get an airbrush and start using it, and when I taught my friends first, I taught them exactly what I was doing, especially in regards to cleaning. And they broke their airbrush really fast because of that, because they were not using them every day. Where like I was using them every day, and that affects a lot of it. Like I get a lot more leeway with my airbrush because I use it so often. So like if this guy here sits on my desk for like 5 days untouched, unmolested, if there's like a little bit of paint here and there, it's gonna like dry on there for 5 days. Mine, it sits there, 12 hours in between usage, hardly ever more than a day. So my experience with models is different than yours. Same thing with the people from the internet. That's the other thing, is like the tutorials that I do are aimed at like painting armies usually. So is it the best, I don't know, ultramarine or whatever? No, but it's a technique that allows you to paint a full army, which is very different. And this is how you paint an ultramarine, and it took me 6 hours to paint one. Good for you. But you have to, think with the end in mind. And what I use to tint paint is glass cleaner. The blue little stuff, Windex, if you have it. I use the cheaper Selection, because $1.99, motherfuckers. I use this to tint paint and to clean my airbrush. I use only this. Almost the only thing that goes into an airbrush is this, into mine, at least.